Shabbat Shalom. The Torah portion that we read this week, Parshat Vayakhel and Pekudei, as I mentioned before, talks about the construction of the tabernacle. And after telling us to observe Shabbat, it recounts all of the things that the Israelites were asked to do, all of the materials they were asked to assemble: gold, silver, and copper, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, linen, goat's hair, leathers of different kinds and different kinds of gemstones, incense, and oils. And all of these things had to come together to be fashioned by a very talented architect whose name was Bezalel and his assistant named Oholiav. Bezalel's name, as I shared in my Shabbat message, literally means in the shadow of God. It's someone who has an intuitive sense of God's presence. And so the Torah tells us how Bezalel made the ark and how he made the cover for the ark with the kruvim, the cherubs, the winged creatures that faced each other in this mystical fashion, how he made the table, how he made the menorah, how he made all of the different pieces. And then there's this little interesting thing about what seems to be not really the most important part of the tabernacle, but a piece of furniture that is in some ways absolutely remarkable. It's the laver, it's the washstand, it's the little thing that the sink or so, I guess if that's what you call it, right, that the priest would use to wash their hands. It was made of copper. And we're taught that it was made from copper from the mirrors of the women who used to gather and serve outside the tabernacle. Huh? What is so special about this copper, and why do we need to know that these copper mirrors that these women used to use were the materials used to make this wash basin? So the Midrash tells us an amazing story about these mirrors. The story goes that when the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, Pharaoh issued a decree to try to keep them from being so fruitful and multiplying, and ordered that they not be allowed to return home when they were out trying to make bricks. So what would happen is the women would go and they would take their wash basins, and God provided a miracle, and their wash basins, when they would dip them in the Nile, would be filled with little fish. I don't know what kind of little fish they were. Maybe this is the reason why Jews are so excited about herring. I don't know. But in any case, they were filled with these little fish, and they would then take these fish, and some of them they would take to market, and they would sell them and use the money to purchase a dinner. And then they would go to the fields and sit with their spouses and their mates, and they would feed them a dinner of fish and whatever they had produced. And then they would sit with them with their mirrors, and they would say, "Hey, look in this mirror. I'm better looking than you are." And then the fellas would say, no, look at me in that mirror. I'm better looking than you are. And they would arouse each other, and then, well, they'd be fruitful and they'd multiply. And so the story is that these are the mirrors that were to be used for the construction of this wash basin that the priests would use to purify and to cleanse themselves. And so the sages say, well, why? What is it about this act that would render it to be a vessel for purification, since it would seem that these mirrors were being used for something that's not entirely pure? And so there's two explanations that the sages give about this. The first explanation is they say that Moses was actually not really happy about this. And then Moses protested and said, hey, Bezalel, don't use these mirrors. These mirrors are being used for lascivious things. These mirrors are being used for, not the kind of pure things that laver or that wash basin is supposed to be used for. And then the Holy One said to Moses, no. It was because of these mirrors that the Israelites became this vast multitude that now surrounds you here in the wilderness. Were it not for these mirrors, we would not have a nation. It is because of these mirrors that we are who we are. But the other interpretation that I like says that when the women realized that they were going to be able to see the construction realized of this tabernacle, this place for God's presence to be found in their midst, that they realized they no longer needed these mirrors to check their physical appearance. That it was their inner light, their inner holiness, the way in which they were themselves a tabernacle, a vessel of light for God's holiness, that they no longer had to care so much about what that mirror would reflect, but it was the true essence of who they were that was going to draw their spouses near and that would make them beautiful in the eyes of their beloveds. And so they relinquished their mirrors because they realized it was their spiritual essence that was the most important. My friend, Rabbi Lisa Grushkow, who shared with me this midrash, also reminded me of a story of another teacher of mine, Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, who told the story that when he was serving his congregation in Massachusetts, one day he took the preschoolers into the sanctuary and showed them around all the different spaces, including the ark. And he didn't open the ark. He said, you come next time and I'll show you what's in that very special place. So apparently the preschool teacher came back the other day and said, you'd be interested to hear what was going on in the conversation among the pre-Kers after they visited the sanctuary. They all guessed what was in that special box. And the students said, maybe it's a new car, or who knows? They were talking about all kinds of different ideas. One young man said, I know what's in there. It's a mirror. And in many ways, the Torah is that mirror that reflects not our physical senses, but our spiritual essences. And when we look in the mirror, we ought look beyond what that physical impression restores to our eyes, but to the true essence of the person that looks back at us. And that's why those mirrors were the perfect material for that vessel of purification and holiness, because they teach us to see the pure, true essence of who we are and to strive to be the best expression of that pure essence each and every day. Shabbat Shalom.